The movie opens on Frank Moses, a retired CIA guy trying to enjoy a quiet life with his girlfriend Sarah Ross. While they're out shopping for home stuff, Frank senses someone watching. That someone is Marvin Boggs, another ex-agent who's convinced they're still being hunted. Marvin's panicked and wants them to run right away, but Frank isn't ready to toss away the peaceful life he's built. Sarah comes back with groceries and listens to Marvin's frantic warnings, but Frank shrugs him off. Marvin drives away. Then his car blows up, leaving everyone to wonder if he really survived. At Marvin's funeral, Frank doesn't buy the official story that he's dead. Sarah nudges him to say a few words, and he awkwardly praises Marvin's odd, paranoid streak and the loyalty he showed. After the service, Frank says they should move to a new place to be safe. Before they can make plans, FBI agents show up and take Frank in for questioning. He tells Sarah to head to his safe house and wait. At the interrogation center, a man pretending to be Frank's lawyer shows up, Jack Horton, a U.S. intelligence officer. He quickly proves he's not there to help. He kills the secretary, forces the facility boss to reveal where Frank is hiding, then kills him too. When they press Frank about a secret Cold War job called Operation Nightshade, he plays dumb. Horton, though, clearly knows Frank's past. He once looked up to him and now uses brutal methods to get answers. Horton reveals he's been watching Sarah and threatens her, which pushes Frank over the edge. Frank smashes out, takes a mercenary hostage, but Horton kills that mercenary and things turn into a firefight. Frank improvises. He rigs a grenade, blows a hole in the chaos, and escapes through a window. He moves quietly and efficiently, taking down attackers as he goes. Just when capture seems likely, Marvin shows up and helps him escape. Outside, they find Sarah. Frank scolds Marvin for dragging Sarah into this danger, but Sarah says she's not helpless and wants to stay with him. Marvin mentions that papers have come out naming both him and Frank in connection with Nightshade, but they don't dive into details. Worried, Frank tells Sarah to hide, but she refuses. She wants to be part of this and says it's where Frank belongs. Their conversation stops when pounding comes from Marvin's trunk. They open it and find a high-level intelligence officer Marvin had been interrogating. Back at headquarters, Horton and his boss Davis talk with the general who ran Nightshade in 1979. The general is freaked about a leaked document and wants to go public. Davis quietly signals Horton, and Horton quietly suffocates the general, then phones in a specialist named Han to handle the mess. Cut to Hong Kong, where Han, a former specialized operative turned freelance killer, carries out a hit. He's led to a client who hired him to kill a man named Mr. Fernandez, but in a twist, Fernandez actually arranged for Han to be there. Han dispatches the client using a bizarre origami trick as a weapon. Horton calls Han to tell him Frank Moses is involved in the leak, and Han is intrigued. MI6's director, Phillips, hears about the Nightshade leak and wants to find Victoria Winslow. He tracks her to a hotel room littered with dead bodies, then pushes her into picking a side in the brewing mess. Meanwhile, back with Frank and company, Marvin is still interrogating the intelligence officer while Sarah watches, excited by the danger and by being part of Frank's world. The captive officer reveals Nightshade with a rogue plan by a U.S. general to smuggle a nuclear device into Moscow as a surprise first strike, and that device went missing. He names Edward Bailey as the scientist behind the bomb. Frank and Marvin remember guarding Bailey during a doomed trip to Moscow when Bailey died in a car blast, and they start to see how they tie into the whole ugly story. Frank suspects a shadowy figure called the Frog is behind the leak. Then Victoria calls to warn him that MI6 has put a hit on him. They think he's a nuclear terrorist, and the Americans have also hired Han to kill him. Marvin thinks it's overkill to send someone like Han after them. Han's team tracks Frank to a jet, and Han flies to the U.S. to hunt him. But when Han finally lands and starts checking into a hotel, he finds out Frank has already stolen his jet. On board the jet, Marvin reveals a score. Frank once imprisoned Han for years, so Han's pursuit is personal. Frank insists finding the Frog is the priority. They head to Paris. At the hotel, they're surrounded by operatives led by Katya Petrovich, a Russian agent and Frank's old flame. Katya greets Frank with a kiss and explains she's been looking into the Nightshade leak. She threatens to hand them over to U.S. authorities unless they cooperate with Russia. Frank privately assures Sarah there's no romance left between him and Katya. They need Katya's help. Horton learns Frank is chasing the Frog. Katya explains the Frog earned his name by poisoning KGB water with tree frog venom and stealing secrets. He's untouchable because of the dirt he has on powerful people. At a busy restaurant, the Frog meets with clients. Frank, Katia, and Sarah show up. The frog freaks when Sarah stares him down, throws a knife at her, and then opens fire. Chaos breaks out. Frank and his allies fight back while Marvin hustles Sarah to safety. The frog bolts and hops onto a bike. Frank and a driver named Catcher chase. Sarah insists on following in a smaller car. The frog crashes his bike, but Sarah's car wrecks too. She can only watch as Frank and Katia catch the frog. They drag him into a building, smash his wine, and demand answers about Nightshade. The frog refuses to talk, mistrusting their motives. Katia thinks about using torture, but Sarah steps between them. Then Sarah uses a different tactic. She charms the frog. Shockingly, it works. He gives up the key to a safe deposit box. Frank pockets the key and makes plans to take Sarah out to dinner. Katia knocks on the door and says Frank must go see a source. Marvin warns Frank not to trust her, but Frank goes anyway. Katia has no real source. She planned to steal the key herself. She drugs Frank's wine, and he blacks out. He wakes up later with Sarah, trying to revive him. Sarah's furious, and Marvin reveals he expected this. He had swapped the keys earlier, so the real one stayed safe. The next day, while Frank and Marvin are walking the streets, Han ambushes them with a mounted machine gun, demanding his plane back. Frank and Marvin dive for cover as gunfire and explosions go off all around them. Han steps out, looking calm but deadly, holding two pistols like he owns the place. While he fires at them, Frank and Marvin slip away and vanish underground through a maintenance tunnel. Once they're in the clear, they rush to the bank, where Katia is being dragged away by the cops. Marvin had tipped off the authorities about a fake link between her and a terrorist group just to throw off their enemies. Inside the vault, Frank and Marvin open the real deposit box and pull out an MI6 file that finally reveals the truth. The person who planted the bomb is locked up in a mental asylum. Without wasting time, the group heads to England. As they're driving down a quiet countryside road, a bullet suddenly hits the hood of their car. It's Victoria, rifle in hand, smirking. Turns out Marvin couldn't resist blabbing about their plan. Instead of shooting them, she offers to help by staging their deaths, so everyone thinks they're gone. Meanwhile, Horton is busy torturing the frog for information. But the frog has swallowed poison, and Horton gets nothing. Furious, he vows he'll hunt Frank down no matter what. Victoria teams up with Frank and Marvin, and together they make a crazy plan to sneak into the asylum where the Mad Bomber is being kept. Victoria pretends to be a new patient, but as soon as she's inside, she knocks out the nurses and guards. Frank and Marvin come in dressed as doctors, take control of the place, and round up the staff to get to the bottom of things. They finally find the so-called criminal, Dr. Edward Bailey. But he's completely out of his mind, talking nonsense thanks to all the medication they've pumped into him. When they ask him about Nightshade, he just babbles. Victoria senses there's more going on, so she purposely lets herself get captured to dig up what MI6 is hiding, while Frank escapes with Bailey. Marvin flies the two of them to a Russian military base, only to find it's controlled by Ivan Simonov, an old Russian general and former ally of Frank's. Ivan gives them a hand, but Bailey is still too unstable to give any useful answers about the bomb. Later, they're ambushed in the city by Han, who's still furious about Frank stealing his plane earlier. He wants it back, and revenge too. After a wild shootout where Han takes down two cops, Frank manages to handcuff him to a refrigerator and make a break for it. But Han, being Han, smashes the door off and knocks out the officers with it. Frank takes Bailey to Marvin's safe house. Sarah, frustrated and tired of the chaos, asks why Han hates Frank so much. Marvin explains that years ago, Frank set Han up for stealing secret intel, which ruined his career. Trying to focus on the mission, Sarah pushes Bailey for more details on Nightshade. This time, Bailey finally admits the weapon exists. He keeps teasing them for hours, leading them around like it's a game, before revealing the truth. The bomb is hidden inside the Kremlin, of all places. He even shows them a secret tunnel disguised behind a Papa John's bathroom that leads straight there. While all this is happening, Victoria is being held at MI6 headquarters. She warns Director Phillips about the bomb threat, but instead of listening, he reveals a shocking truth. MI6 has been covering it up. He orders her execution. Of course, Victoria turns the tables, kills the assassin sent after her, and escapes. Back in Moscow, Frank, Marvin, Sarah, and Bailey blow open the Kremlin's basement using explosives. They dress up as soldiers to sneak inside. Katia gets word they're in town and gears up to confront them. Sarah stays behind to guard their exit while Bailey leads Frank and Marvin deeper underground. He unveils a red mercury bomb, a weapon so powerful it leaves no trace or fallout. Before they can react, Katia shows up with a gun pointed at Frank. He talks her down, convincing her that the weapon is too dangerous for anyone to keep. She hesitates, but decides to join them. While on guard duty, Sarah runs into a soldier named Pasha, who awkwardly flirts with her. To her own surprise, she kisses him back, only for Frank to walk in, knock the guy out, and drag her away. The group escapes through Papa John's again, blowing up the tunnel behind them to erase their tracks. Just when things seem under control, Victoria calls Frank with bad news. Bailey isn't innocent. He plans to activate the bomb himself. Frank turns around to find Bailey holding a gun, confirming everything. Bailey confesses that he leaked the Nightshade documents on purpose to trick Frank into finding the bomb for him. Horton and his team burst in, revealing they've made a deal with Bailey to hand the weapon over. Bailey kills Katia without hesitation and leaves Frank, Marvin, and Sarah surrounded by Russian soldiers. At the same time, Horton and Bailey head to a U.S. airbase. But Horton betrays Bailey, planning to lock him up forever. Bailey retaliates mid-flight. He pulls out a hidden vial of nerve gas from his shoe, injects himself with the antidote, and unleashes the toxin in the cabin. Soldiers collapse one by one as he kills Davis and gives Horton just enough antidote to keep him alive for fun. Frank and the team, still trapped in Russia, are lined up for execution. But just as the firing squad aims, Victoria arrives like a ghost with a sniper rifle, taking out the soldiers and rescuing them. Soon after, Frank learns Bailey is hiding at the Iranian embassy in London. He and the team fly there to stop him. Before boarding, Han ambushes Frank, and they face off again. Frank throws his gun away, telling Han there's something bigger at stake. After a tense pause, Han decides to help him, but only after this mission, promising he'll come for Frank later. In London, they make a plan. Sarah will be the one to infiltrate the embassy. At a fancy restaurant, they spot the Iranian ambassador. To stage a scene, Frank pretends to argue with Sarah and storms off, letting the ambassador step in to comfort her. Sarah plays along and poisons the man, forcing him to cooperate. Meanwhile, Marvin sneaks into the embassy disguised as a defector. Sarah hands him a package before heading upstairs to the ambassador's office. When a guard bursts in and questions her, she shoots him. At the same time, Marvin sets off a distraction, blowing up all the toilets in the building, so that security calls in plumbers. Frank and Han show up in disguises, tools in hand. Inside, Bailey finalizes his arms deal, but then kills his partners with a knife, revealing Horton tied up nearby. He activates the bomb, declaring he wants revenge on the governments that ruined his life. Frank, Han, Marvin, and Sarah break in, finding Horton dead and the bomb ticking. A firefight breaks out as Victoria enters to back them up. Bailey snatches Sarah and flees in a car. Victoria and Han jump into a sports car and chase him, bullets flying from every direction. Marvin, now in a helicopter, tries to disarm the bomb, but accidentally speeds up the timer. The chopper gets hit, forcing them to crash land. Frank wakes up bruised but alive. With only minutes left, he grabs the bomb, steals a car, and races to the runway where Bailey's plane is taking off. He climbs aboard for a final standoff. Bailey holds Sarah at gunpoint, forcing Frank to drop his weapon. As Sarah escapes, Bailey sets the plane to autopilot, thinking he's won, until he hears a faint beeping. He looks over to find the bomb ticking beside him. Bailey smirks, realizing he's been outsmarted. Well played, he mutters right before the plane explodes midair. With the threat gone, everyone breathes again. Han, ever the businessman, demands $30 million for his plane and another $20 million for not killing Frank. Despite the chaos, Frank can't help but laugh. As things calm down, he and Sarah share a kiss, a small reminder that even after all the madness, there's still something worth holding on to. And that's how this wild mission ends, with explosions, betrayal, redemption, and a little bit of love.